It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. No excuse for appalling hate speech. Condemnation from the Prime Minister after the BBC shows punk duo Bob Vylan chanting death to the IDF at Glastonbury. Preparing for heatwave harm as mainland Europe sizzles and England gets set for temperatures hotter than Barbados. Obesity crackdown, the government plan to help shoppers to eat healthily and save the NHS billions. A week after the US attacked Iran's nuclear facilities, the UN watchdog claims Tehran will have the capacity to begin enriching uranium again in a matter of months. And the vigil of grief and quiet anger as the family of Zara Alina, murdered 3 years ago, say that women in Britain are still not safe. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. The Prime Minister has tonight condemned yesterday's controversial Glastonbury performance by the rap punk duo Bob Vylan, saying there's no excuse for appalling hate speech. The group encouraged the crowd to chant "Death, death to the IDF" in reference to the Israeli Defense Forces currently fighting in Gaza. So Keir Starmer also said any performers making threats or inciting violence should not be given a platform. As police review the footage, there are also growing questions over the BBC's handling of the incident, which was live-streamed online. Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer has tonight's first report and a warning: it does contain footage of the chant, which you might find offensive.
Removing last night's rubbish, but Glastonbury is now dealing with a much bigger mess this year. Two acts which played back-to-back on the Westholt stage on Saturday, whose comments are now being looked at by police.
Are liberated and free.
The BBC streaming this set live by punk act Bob Vylan, its frontman first leading crowds in this chant.
Free, free! Free, free!
Before suggesting they say this.
Death, death to the IDF!
On social media, the Israeli embassy saying the audience's reaction raises serious concerns about the normalisation of extremist language, where Streeting had this to say on Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips.
Well, I thought it was appalling, to be honest, and I think the BBC and Glastonbury have got questions to answer about how we saw such a spectacle on our screens. I'd also say to the Israeli embassy, get your own house in order in terms of the conduct of your own citizens and the settlers in the West Bank.
Glastonbury organiser Emily Eavis saying we are appalled by the statements made by Bob Vylan. Their chants very much crossed a line, and we are urgently reminding everyone involved in the production that there is no place at Glastonbury for anti-Semitism, hate speech or incitement to violence. As for those who watched the band...
When there's children and civilians being murdered and starved, then I think it's important that people are speaking out on these issues. However, inciting more death and violence is not the way to do it.
It was Kneecap who performed directly after. The Irish trio had already made headlines before after rapper Liam O'Haney was charged with a terror offence for allegedly holding up a Hezbollah flag at a gig last year. His bandmate joking on stage during their set that fans should start a riot outside the courts before quickly clarifying no riots, just love and support.
The band has a long history of being pro-Palestinian, so when they say free Palestine, people are expecting that. I don't think anybody was expecting it from Bob Vylan, and I don't think anybody really immediately got what he was saying.
For some here, Glastonbury is a magical place where the magnetic energy of ley lines cross. But the festival now finds itself in a battle line with politicians who'd already objected to Kneecap's performance being allowed to go ahead here in the first place.
What was it, just over a year and a half ago, that innocent festival goers at a festival in Israel were raped and murdered by Hamas. And then we have a music festival here in the UK where you have a chant saying death to the Israeli armed forces who are taking action to protect people from what Hamas did in Israel. I just think it's disgusting.
Wider questions for the BBC, with Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy saying she's asked the BBC's Director General to explain what due diligence it carried out into Bob Vylan beforehand. A spokesperson for the corporation acknowledging the comments were deeply offensive and the performance will not be made available on demand. Posting on social media afterwards, the band's drummer doubling down by repeating their chant. Its frontman posting how he'd gone for ice cream, as Avon and Somerset police now assess whether any offences have been committed by the pair. The heat, for now, mostly on the BBC for live streaming the controversial comments in the first place. Comments which have had an impact way beyond these fields. Katie Spencer, Sky News on Worthy Farm.
Well, as Katie was mentioning there, pressure is now mounting on the BBC over its handling of the broadcast. This evening, my colleague Jonathan Samuels spoke to the former BBC Director of Television, Danny Cohen.
Should the Director General go?
Yes, I think he should. I think he should because this incident is the most serious broadcasting incident for the BBC, I'd say, in at least a decade. It involved disgusting levels of racism and it forms a pattern of anti-Semitic problems for the BBC. So yes, it's time for change.
Let's go to our political correspondent Liz Bates, who joins us live from Westminster. Liz, so a day of political condemnation ending this evening with words from the Prime Minister, also demanding answers from the BBC.
Yes, you're right. I mean, ever since those images of Bob Vylan chanting in Glastonbury did emerge and were broadcast on the BBC, there has been a political backlash brewing here in Westminster. And then we have had this intervention today from the Prime Minister. These were his words. He said, "There's no excuse for this kind of appalling hate speech. I said that Kneecap should not have been given a platform, and that goes for any other performers making threats or inciting violence. The BBC needs to explain how these scenes came to be broadcast." So echoing there, a government statement that was put out very quickly after the images emerged, and his own Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, who immediately was questioning the BBC on this and asking for an explanation as to why it was broadcast. We have heard from others as well. The Conservative Party leader, Kemi Badenoch, said that it was grotesque. So a pretty universal blanket condemnation here in Westminster. There have been some other MPs, I should say. Adnan Hussain, who's a Blackburn MP, a Muslim MP who stood on a pro-Gaza ticket, he did take to social media to say that he was more offended by genocide than an artist expressing themselves. So not every MP is of the same opinion, but certainly senior figures in both the Labour Party and the Tories, and lots of other MPs as well, condemning what the images that came from Glastonbury, and also this extra question of an explanation from the BBC. And I think that's what we will see going forward, more pressure on the BBC, including from the Prime Minister tonight.
And Liz, we were probably expecting a Labour rebellion on welfare to be dominating the news going into next week. Tomorrow we're set to hear full details of the government's concessions to rebels. Will they be enough, do you think?
It does seem at this stage like those concessions will be enough. It was quite interesting today, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, doing a couple of big interviews in newspapers in which he took full responsibility for what has happened on this issue of welfare reforms. It looked at one point like the government was about to suffer a big, humiliating defeat. They've managed to put some concessions on the table to win over a big chunk of those MPs who were threatening to rebel. But in his interviews today, Keir Starmer defending, first of all, his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. A lot of the criticism for the lack of communication, the breakdown in discipline, was aimed at him. And the Prime Minister also suggesting that he said this wasn't an excuse but an explanation. He'd been distracted by international affairs. He was at the G7, then he was at NATO, and by the time he turned his attention to this issue, it had got a little bit out of hand. He thinks that the policy and what will be on the table in the House of Commons this week is now in a better position, but there are still senior figures in the Labour Party intervening. Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, urging MPs still to vote against this legislation and saying that even now the concessions are in place, place that will create now a two-tier welfare system. And he's one of many figures in the Labour Party who's calling for the government to actually scrap this and rethink it and start again. But we will see this pressure building up over the next couple of days ahead of that big vote in the House of Commons on Tuesday, which it does look like the government will still win, but there could be still quite a sizable rebellion and a lot of damage done between Number 10 and Labour backbenchers, which will have to be repaired over the coming weeks and months. And I think the Prime Minister today in those interviews admitting that there's a long way to go on that.
Liz Bates with the latest from Westminster. Liz, thank you. The ongoing heat wave has brought temperatures of over 30 degrees to parts of the country today, and they're set to rise even higher tomorrow. Parts of southeast England could see highs of 35 degrees, with Wimbledon on course for its hottest opening day on record. Well, the hot weather means an amber heat health alert will remain in place until Tuesday evening, but temperatures are even higher across mainland Europe. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi reports.
It's official. We've now entered our second heat wave of the year. Temperatures top 31 degrees in southern England. Here, the cool water of the Thames in Teddington providing a little relief. An official heat wave is recorded when areas reach a certain temperature for 3 consecutive days. The threshold varies from 25 to 28 degrees in different parts of the UK. And the warning from the weather experts is we'd better get used to it.
I'm expecting these high temperatures to become more frequent. At the same time, across Europe, their heat waves are getting more intense and frequent as well. Just yesterday, Spain provisionally broke its all-time June record of reaching 46 Celsius.
Global warming is pushing temperatures up across the planet, and Europe is now the world's hotspot, with temperatures across the continent rising at the fastest rate. A red alert warning is in place across several parts of Portugal, where temperatures have climbed over 40 degrees.
Let's take a look at what's going to happen across Europe this week. From the Med all the way up to Paris and London, we're seeing really high temperatures, especially in Rome, Madrid and Bordeaux, all above 35 degrees centigrade on Monday. By Tuesday, those temperatures will climb even further. Paris will hit 37 degrees and London is expected to climb up to 35 degrees. But by Wednesday, we'll see a sharp fall. London will be back down to a more manageable 24 degrees. But for the rest of the continent, the heat wave will continue until Thursday and then later on into Friday, when it finally begins to cool down.
The next few days present a real danger to health, especially for the elderly, pregnant women and people with underlying health conditions.
It is a killer. There's no other way of saying it. So these sorts of temperatures we're experiencing are unusual, extreme, and if you go out in the midday sun without protection, without water, it is really dangerous.
So the advice is enjoy the hot weather sensibly, stay hydrated, and if you can, stay indoors for the next few days at least, after which the summer should feel much more manageable. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
A 6-year-old girl remains in a very serious condition after a tree partially collapsed at a park in Southend. Another little girl, aged 7, was killed in the incident at Chalkwell Park yesterday afternoon. Sky's Alice Porter sent this report from Southend.
As children played beneath this large cedar tree, it suddenly broke apart. Several were pinned under its fallen branches. 5 children were taken to hospital. A 7-year-old girl died from her injuries. A 6-year-old girl remains in a critical condition. The tragedy unfolded in front of families enjoying the good weather.
I was here just with my little sister. She came here just to play. And then, yeah, I wasn't even looking because she was behind me playing with other kids. And then I heard this massive noise. It sounded kind of like fireworks. And turned around, and it was just this tree falling down. I feel really lucky because she was just 8, the other girl is 7. Could have been her. That's what struck the most.
More than 50 people rushed to the scene to try and lift the branches and save the children. Investigations have begun into how the tree could have partially collapsed. Questions have been raised by local residents who told me that parts of the tree were being supported by metal poles. The mayor of Southend-on-Sea has said, "I am heartbroken by the tragic loss of a young life following the incident in Chalkwell Park. As both mayor and a Chalkwell councillor, my thoughts are with the child's family, friends and all those affected." A community shocked as a place they've enjoyed for years suddenly becomes a place of mourning.
I woke up this morning and my first thought was I slept, but I bet that little girl's mum didn't sleep. And just feel heartbroken. This is our park.
More than £18,000 has already been donated to the family of the little girl who died. A generous gesture by a community reeling from tragedy. Alice Porter, Sky News.
The government is preparing to release its 10-year plan for the NHS in England. A central part of it will be to reduce the burden that obesity places on the health service, estimated at £11 billion a year. Food retailers and manufacturers will be told to make a healthy choice, the easy choice for customers. But does it amount to the nanny state telling shoppers what to eat? Our North of England correspondent, Charlotte Leeming, has been getting reaction in West Yorkshire.
This farmers' market in West Yorkshire offers healthy food at affordable prices, something the government's keen to promote under new plans to tackle obesity and get the nation eating well. The 10-year strategy includes supermarkets doing more to make sure healthier options are available on their shelves. If they don't, they could be fined.
If we reduce calorie intake in this country by just 50 calories a day, that would lift 340,000 children out of obesity and 2 million lives. Let me finish the answer. Now, by taking the approach we're taking with supermarkets, they will decide through the combination of where they put their products, how they do price promotions, the reformulation, what products they choose to put on the shelves. They will work with us to make sure that we nudge people in the right direction without any of us even noticing.
Treatment of obesity costs the NHS just over £11 billion every year. These changes are going to put more responsibility onto big business to make sure what they're doing is being held to account.
Retailers will have to report their sales of healthy food to the government. To make sure stores have a variety on offer, they're given a point score based on their health content. The health score of the average shopping basket is 67 out of 100. The new initiative sets a target to raise this to 69. The research suggests that this would cut obesity by around a fifth over 3 years, helping more than 3 million people to achieve a healthier weight. So do shoppers in Otley think this will work?
It's educating people as well. You can make a cheap meal, a good nutritious meal, really cheaply by buying fresh produce. You don't have to buy processed stuff.
They need to go straight to the food companies in order to get them to stop manufacturing this food.
I think we've allowed people learning how to cook healthily or use their initiative, really. They're scared because they often talk about being they not only haven't got the money, but they're time poor as well.
Supermarkets have broadly welcomed the plans, but there are concerns it's focusing on the wrong area if it's going to help ease the pressure on the NHS.
Before we get to supermarket baskets, maybe we should try and increase the number of nurses that are really in a good place for that prevention conversation.
But the government insists the changes will mean healthy food is more accessible and affordable, leading to a cut in the number of calories in customers' shopping baskets. Charlotte Leeming, Sky News, Otley in West Yorkshire.
A murder investigation is underway following the death of a pregnant woman in the County Down area of Northern Ireland. 27-year-old Sarah Montgomery, who was found unconscious with a serious injury in a property. Detectives say the mother of two was later pronounced dead at the scene. A 28-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder. In Ukraine, at least 12 people were injured after Russia launched a huge aerial attack, firing a total of 537 aerial weapons. 477 drones and decoys and 60 missiles were fired. That's according to Ukraine's Air Force, making it the heaviest bombardment since the war began more than 3 years ago. The Air Force also said that one of their pilots died when his F-16 fighter jet crashed after sustaining damage while shooting down air targets. The UN's nuclear watchdog has said that Iran will have the capacity to begin enriching uranium again in a matter of months. Rafael Grossi, who heads the International Atomic Energy Agency, said that US strikes on 3 sites a week ago had caused severe damage, but that it wasn't total. And this comes after President Trump said the US strikes on Iran had obliterated their nuclear capabilities.
We don't know where this material could be, or if part of it could have been, under the attack during those 12 days. So some could have been destroyed as part of the attack, but some could have been moved. Iran had a very vast, ambitious program, and part of it may still be there. And if not, there is also the self-evident truth that the knowledge is there.
Donald Trump says the US government has found a buyer for the American arm of TikTok, but he isn't ready to reveal who it is. The president claims multiple parties are coming together to purchase the social media giant, which he will announce in about 2 weeks. The US government ordered TikTok to find a new owner for its American operations last year over fears sensitive data was being passed on to the Chinese government. And the former England captain, Paul Ince, has been charged with drink driving. Cheshire police say the 57-year-old was arrested after his car hit a central reservation in Cheshire yesterday. He's been bailed to appear at Chester Magistrates Court on the 18th of July. A vigil has been held to mark 3 years since the death of Zara Alina, murdered by a man who had recently been released from prison. It comes ahead of a meeting between Zara's family and the Prime Minister, which will focus on Labour's commitment to halving violence against women and girls. Sky's Emma Birchley was there and she sent us this report.
In silence, they walked, together finishing a journey so brutally cut short 3 years ago. Zara Alina was heading home in the early hours when she was attacked by a stranger on the street, sexually assaulted and murdered in East London. For the 35-year-old's aunt, this gathering as much a protest as a vigil.
There was a needless murder and that we must also protest. So we come together to silently protest. To protest against systems that failed Zara, to protest against a culture that accepts and facilitates violence and excuses it.
The man who would go on to kill Zara had already followed 2 other women that night, just 9 days after being let out of prison. But Jordan McSweeney should have been back inside after breaching the conditions of his release. Failures by the probation service meant he was still free.
This walk is about remembering Zara, but it's also a reminder of all those people behind the statistics. And next week, Zara's Aunt Farah will meet with the Prime Minister as the government finalises its strategy to halve violence against women and girls in a decade.
It was a bold pledge made by Labour that won't be easy to achieve. The 4th such strategy since 2010, yet the number of offences has soared.
Far too often, women are blamed. Why were you walking home alone? Why did you drink that much? Why were you wearing that? No, no more. We need to flip the culture, and we are doing that. We need early intervention. We need prevention. We need every tool at the government's disposal.
Anja Morge has been close friends with Farah for over 3 decades.
Farah and I met actually around the time that Zara was born.
Working together to help those affected by domestic violence.
This is not about the fact that it happens over there, it happens here, it happens in our families, it happens in our communities. Zara was walking home, she was walking home and she couldn't get home.
Joining Farah, the sister of Sabina Nessa, and the cousin of Jan Mustafa, 2 other women murdered in London. Grieving relatives brought together by the kind of loss no one wants to share, and united in their determination to finally see change. Emma Birchley, Sky News, Ilford in East London.
Okay, it's time to get the latest sports news now from James and Sky Sports News.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
How do you manage to keep your spirits up and the spirits of your teammates after challenges you may face?
Self-confidence in yourself and your own ability is such an important aspect to have.
I've had a number of injuries the last 1.5 or 2 years, and they've taken their toll on my head at times.
Sometimes you just need to grab somebody and just give them a hug, tell them that it'll be okay.
Professional footballers helping young people with their mental health. That's the aim of virtual soccer schools, alongside learning platform Amazing People Schools. Online, in person, and with AI technology.
My question is, how do you deal with stress on and off the pitch?
Football is the most powerful sport in the world, and utilising footballers, we just see them as players on the pitch, passing the ball and scoring goals, but they have so much more to offer. So at VSS, we're providing them with a platform to showcase their mental health strategies, their setbacks, how they deal with anxiety, pressure and growth mindset, just not on the pitch, but how they utilise it off the pitch as well.
Former Arsenal defender Thomas Vermaelen was the latest footballer to take part in the charity's first ever in-person session.
Allow yourself to be disappointed.
I enjoy passing on experiences, if it's about mental health, my career, the pressure I've been through, giving my experience to the younger generation is something that I really like. In earlier years, we didn't really speak about it, so it's just we get along and we go through tough times, but you hear now players basically after their career opening up about the struggles they had during. As ex-professionals, if we can give some sort of experience of insight, what to expect, or any advice we can give to the younger generation, I think it's only good. We can prepare them a little bit.
That sentiment was shared by Chelsea midfielder Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall.
It is important in this day and age to talk about it because there's a lot of people that go through it. As a youngster, I probably let things affect me a little bit more, and I was a bit more naive to it. But the older you get, the more experience you get, I think you just learn to not let it get you down. If you see negative comments or whatever, just don't let it get you down. Look, just see the positive ones and how you can use that in a good way. As I've gone along in my career, I've learned to deal with that in a better way.
Pressure is in the moment can be very uncomfortable. At the same time, it's also something what gives excitement to the career and the games. But yeah, if you really struggle with the pressure and you see it's affecting your performances, I wish then in those days you could speak about it more, but I think in those days it was more like a sign of weakness sometimes.
It's that perception of weakness around mental health that the charity wants to break down amongst the young.
It's amazing to see the young people come on to our sessions, have that confidence to ask the player a question on real tough subject matters such as social media, resilience, growth mindset, bullying, and how those players have dealt with it within their own world and giving back to the next generation.
Hi there, my name is Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. I'm here today to talk about stress, anxiety, mental health.
And VSS is taking it one step further with the introduction of AI and on-demand.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
And that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by John Yates, Executive Director of the Youth Endowment Fund, and Eva Santina Evans, Political Correspondent at Politics Joe. Welcome both. Among the stories, we'll be discussing this on the front of the Mail about tonight's top story here on Sky. Their headline, BBC chiefs should face charges over Glastonbury. We'll be right back.
In
In February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. Thousands of Russians were drafted. For some, the reality of frontline warfare meant one thing: desertion.
I had a rush of adrenaline. It was a kind of treason.
But they did not escape on their own.
I help people to desert Russian army.
The stakes are high, but for some, there's no other option.
We keep going till Putin's regime is over.
Escaping Putin on Sky News.